Y'all planning for this?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Reading Time with Jarvis. I am your host and the Perfect RA co-founder, Matthew Jarvis. And in this mini episode, I'm going to outline for you one of the hundreds of books that I've read over my career, specifically the books that have made the biggest impact. Now, this book today, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Newport, is not a book that I read early in my career, so I can't give it any credit for shaping my success. However, it is a book that I recently finished that I wish I would have read at the beginning of my career. So for those of you towards the beginning of your career who still have a lot of growth left to go, I think this is an important book, which is why it's on the podcast. So Cal Newport, also the author of Deep Work, an important but a bit dull book, wrote this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, to really sort of debunk this idea that you should follow your passions. And here's where I see this with financial advisors, including myself. When we talk about building a niche, they say, well, I'm really passionate about serving this particular group of individuals. And we say, great, how can you build a business case? Can those people afford to hire you? And they say, well, that doesn't really matter. I just want to serve them. And that's a noble ambition. But when you both go out of business, you are helping no one. And so what Cal talks about in his book is that you have to work really, 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 really hard to get to a level of success. And once you're at this top tier level of success, for example, Micah and I, right, once we're in the top 1% of 1% of financial advisors, that's when we can create the Perfect RA podcast because we have the experience, we've done the time to be able to share things that really work. Now, obviously, this strategy is not followed by most marketing experts who go straight to telling others how they should work versus doing the work themselves, but we'll set that aside for another podcast. I want to give you a couple of takeaways from this book. Takeaway number one is that you need to start tracking how much time you are spending actually improving your skill set. Now, this is easily confused with playing office. So you might, for example, tell yourself, well, I'm listening to the Perfect RA podcast. That's learning. Therefore, I'm improving my practice. I'm improving my skill set. Wrong. As much as I love the Perfect RA podcast, in fact, and this might sound odd, I listen to it myself. Listening to it alone means nothing, which is why the podcast always talks about action. So it's the action that you take. It's the time you spend doing the practice that is uncomfortable. And Cal talks about this as it relates to musicians. He says lots of people hit the 10,000 hour mark, which was made famous by Malcolm Gladwell. They hit the 10,000 hour mark of practice, but it's not intentional practice. So you sitting around and strumming the guitar with your buddies will not make you a world-class guitar player. However, if you spend 10,000 hours doing the most difficult finger-punishing guitar practice, you will become a brilliant guitar player. Same is true for financial advisors. You can spend 10,000 hours getting every designation there is, reading every Kids's article there is, which is a noble ambition, but it will not make you a great financial planner. It's only those things that you implement, those things that make you uncomfortable, that count. Takeaway number two, ignore your passion until you have success. I mentioned this earlier in this episode. If you have a passion for delivering financial advice to people who can't afford financial advisors, that is awesome. I admire that. I have a lot of that drive myself. However, if you yourself are not yet financially successful, you will go bankrupt helping these people who can't afford you. If you say, hey, I want to start a podcast telling financial advisors how to run their practices, but you don't yet have a successful financial advisor practice, it's a bad idea. So focus first on being the best possible financial advisor you can be, delivering the most massive value. How's that for grammatically correct? Most massive value. And then you can pivot and say, now I want to do pro bono work. Now I want to adjust my focus to people that are inside my passion or other things. For example, an example of that is I'm currently writing a book for financial advisors. It's something I I waited 18 years to do because I wanted to make sure I was a master of my trade before I got distracted by what is one of my passions, writing. Takeaway number three, perhaps my favorite takeaway from the book, which is why I love it so much. You have to be willing to do the work that no one else is willing to do. So one of the reasons that Mike and I are able to do this podcast or we're able to live the kind of lives that we have and the practices that we have is that we're willing to do the work. For example, when it comes time to do surge meetings, we crank out a lot of surge meetings. Admittedly, Micah cranks out twice as many as I do, but we crank out a ton of these, and it's really hard work, and most advisors aren't willing to put in that kind of work, which is why most advisors don't have our level of success. To pick an easier example, most advisors spend the majority of their day checking email. In fact, some advisors even keep their email open all day long. This is not hard work because everybody is willing to check their emails all day long. Very few people, myself and Micah included, are willing to only check their email once a day or every few days, which is, we know, a proven recipe for success. So look at your life, at your practice, and really anything that you say, hey, these are easy things for me to do, quit doing them. And things you say, these are really hard things for me to do, but they move the needle. Those are the things you need to focus on. So So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. I would recommend his other book, Deep Work, a bit dull, but great techniques as well. And in the immortal words of Nacho Libre, go away, or eat some books.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father.